Hi guys, this is the third video of the DT coursework explaining walkthroughs. Today we're going to go through the design brief and what it is that needs to go into the design brief and how we can set out the design brief. Just waiting for my screen to share. Right. So, as with the other pages, I'm going to set out every examination, non-examination assessment walkthrough in the same layout. So, first page, this is where I will put in the link to the meeting video, so you can watch the meeting all through again, or you can just go to DT is Mr. Sanders on the YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel DT is Mr. Sanders, and then search for GCSE coursework 2021 on the playlist, and you will find all of the different pages explained in there. As mentioned in the previous video, throughout your coursework, I'm obviously going to be giving you the help sheets that help you along the way. Now, I do not want to see 21 help sheets copied, layout, exactly the same layout all the way through. All right, I need to have the mix up in there. I need to have you thinking how you can change the layout and how it is put onto your page to show the iterative thinking, but also to get your view across. Okay, so I don't want you to be copying the layout straight off the page. All right, all of these pages, the help sheets, are done to a tag of a grade of about a 7 or an 8, possibly a 9, depending on how far you push yourself. So for a lot of you, that will be tag +1. Some of you will be your tag, and you will have to just go a little bit above it to get that tag +1. Last week, I think it was, I sent out a coursework timetable, just stating when pages need to be handed in and the dates that you need to be working to within that. Your first date that you were set was the creating the context mind map. Now that was given to you on the 1st of June when the design briefs came out, and I said the 9th of June had to be the deadline for that. Now I still haven't had all those in, and I'm quite disappointed in that. And you've really got to start shifting the gear up a little bit in order to keep on top of this. You cannot be keep on falling behind in the work and then expect to be picked up again. All right, because you've got to take the responsibility on this now. It's an awkward time at the moment, and we're limited into the amount of contact that I can give you face to face, obviously. So exploring the context page, the actual page for that is today. So Monday, 15th of June, end of play today. So midnight tonight is the deadline. We then move on to the design situation and design brief. Set today, 15th of June, and that needs to be handed in on the 22nd of June. This isn't a big page. I'm giving you a week to do 1 page of A4. When you think about that, that is not a lot, really. So there really is no excuse in why you shouldn't have done this or why you shouldn't be staying on top of it. You need to be staying on top of this. It is vitally important. Just to reiterate, exploring the context, end of play today, 15th of June. Design brief, end of Monday, June 22nd. Okay, 2 pages into me by June 22nd. Just to sing the praises of a couple of students who have completed that first page, okay, I had Gabriel send me his page, and his mind maps were off the chart. His was absolutely fantastic, his work. I haven't copied that in here, but it was absolutely outstanding. These two here, fantastic piece of work. You can see the layout of it. You can see the amount of detail into this page. Absolutely perfect set out layout of the page. I'll be coming back to this one here from Matthew in a minute, but just to move on, before we start, all pages created on an A4 sheet must have a size 10 font. Don't want anything bigger than a size 10 font on an A4 sheet. If it's an A3 sheet, you can adjust that to a 12, okay, a size 12 font. All pages must have an introduction. They must have a conclusion. They must have the title, and they must have a next page or a next step. Okay, that is the format all of the coursework pages have to have for everybody. If you don't put that on your pages, if you miss out on an introduction and a conclusion, then you're missing out on 5 marks. Okay, you get 5 marks for completing the actual layout, and you're missing out on that on those marks. So that could be the difference in getting a 7 and an 8. Could be the difference between getting a 6 and a 7. Okay, so it's quite tight. All pages need to use the same font all the way through. The only time you can change the font is when you're looking to enhance a section of writing or a title. I want to see if you start to use a Times New Roman format in page 1, that stays with you all through. I do not want to see Times New Roman on the Exploring the Context page, Arial on the design brief page, and then Comic Sans on the research pages. Okay, stays the same all the way through. The layout or the decoration of the page, this needs to be kept. The continuity needs to be all the way through. Now you can see on this one here, on Matthew's, he's gone for kind of like a gradient of blue. So starting off with the dark and then going the light and then going back to dark again. Now this decoration has got to be kept the same all the way through. Okay, you can't have this on the first page and then not have it going all the way through. So that needs to be kept the same. Same with this one from Archie. Okay, the coloured boxes, he's set the tone there. So he's got to have that kind of feeling all the way through. You might want to rethink that, Archie, and just think that's a little bit hard to read at times. Okay, so just think about the amount of writing onto it and think about if it's easy to read with those colours on there. Where are we? Minimal white space. So this doesn't mean there needs to be no white space at all and all your text is kind of pushed all together and sandwiched all together. It doesn't mean that. You need to have obviously the barriers between it. You need to have the white space between the text just to border it all off, just to set the space. The white space is when there's a large chunk of it. A large chunk of it which looks as if there should be something in there, maybe a picture, maybe a block of text. Okay, that is where we don't want to see the white space. So no white space like that on the page. This is an example of a design brief page. Okay, so this was from the coursework's just gone this year. This was marked at a grade 8, so kind of the equivalent of a grade 8. This was in the top mark band of the page. You can see there's plenty of information about its primary user, not that detailed, but it doesn't need to be massively detailed at the moment because you'll go into a more detailed primary user page later on. Information about the stakeholder. A definition of what a stakeholder is needs to be in there. His design briefs, they're a little bit wordy. Okay, they don't need to be that wordy. They could probably be half the size of that. but he's got 3 different design briefs there. He's got a table that rank the design briefs. So you can see design brief number 3 scored ticks in everything. So this design brief here is obviously his chosen design brief. He's got the reason why he's decided to pick that 3rd design brief. Then he's got the conclusion and the next steps. So it's all working throughout the page in that iterative way. This one, a mind map in the middle. So this is his context mind map. I want you to include that in there. I want you to include a picture of the person. So that needs to be in there. He's got a little bit more detail about his primary user, and he's got information about his stakeholders. He's missed out on the evaluation table. So he hasn't actually said what design brief he's going to be choosing. So his was only scored at a grade 7. So his was just not in that top mark band, but he ended up getting a grade 9 overall. So just bear that in mind. This one was a good design brief page. Okay, you can see primary user, definitions, who his primary user is going to be, his stakeholder, who his stakeholder is going to be, what a stakeholder actually means. He's got the analysis table. He's got his design briefs here color coded. So the green means it's the highest scoring one. It's the good one. Amber, middle, red, the bottom scoring one. He's got the key stating what it means. And then he's got the explanation of the evaluation table, which is what you need to have in there. So this is the ideal layout of the page. As I mentioned before, I don't want you to be copying the exact layout of the page. Okay, so the way I've set it out here is if you have an absolute mental mind block and you can't lay it out any other way, then just do it this way. Okay, it's not as if everyone's going to be having the same text, so it doesn't really matter if the layouts are the same. But ideally, you mix it up a little bit. You put the boxes in different places. But it's got to read the iterative way. So reading as if your brain's going through this. So you're not going to have your chosen design brief up here and then down in the corner have the possible design briefs and talk about how you went through it. Because that's not how your mind works. Your mind goes through the chosen ones first, and then down here will be your chosen design brief after it's gone through the iterative way. First thing, top corner, your design brief. So design brief, identify primary user, title. That goes in the top left-hand corner, or wherever you want to put your titles if you've got a different decoration. Second is a brief introduction to the page. So this is just saying what it is you're looking to do on the page. So here you could put something along the lines of, I'm going to be identifying my primary user, and then I will be considering 3 different design briefs and choosing the one most suited to my context and primary user. So that could be the brief introduction to the page. That explains what's going on. The more detailed introduction then goes along why you're looking into primary user, why you've got to look into your stakeholder. So you're giving a little bit more information about what it is you're doing on the page because you've got a little bit more room to do that. Explain the reasons why you've had to put in an evaluation chart. What are the benefits of that? Not too much detail because you're going to be explaining that down here. The primary user, this is quite a complicated area now. This primary user you choose on this page, on the second page of your coursework, the first week of your coursework, you choose your primary user. This primary user has to stay with you all the way through your coursework. So you do not change the primary user all the way through from now. So you've got to be very, very sure on this primary user, on who this primary user is. Have they got a link to the product that you're going to be designing or you think you might be designing? Within this section, I want you to put, obviously, their name, age, job, interests, and then a little bit of information about them. So that could be in the form of you have name, blah, blah, age, blah, blah, interests, blah, blah, job, blah, blah, and then a brief introduction to them. And they could just, you could put actually from the user, you could say, hi, my name's Pete, blah, blah. I love to have football on television constantly, or something like that. I don't know. There needs to be a picture of the primary user in this. So we need to have a picture of the primary user, ideally in the setting that the context is going into, but it doesn't have to be in a set. It could just be a face-on picture, an actual idea of who the primary user is, what they look like. You can, if you want, at the bottom of this section, look into
Here's your reminder.
Other area.
Brush her teeth.
Alexa, off, please. Sorry. At the bottom of this primary user section, you might want to look into other primary users, so other people that will be using this constantly, but might not be your typical primary user that you're going to use all the way through this. Okay, this could just be a list of them. This doesn't need to be that weighty. Okay, so don't think you've got to go and explain full on who they are, everything about them. You might just want to put, you've designed a shoe for the primary user. And you can say, to give it a little bit of context, my primary user loves to walk the dog up in Newlands Corner every weekend. They have a really big problem in their shoe sticking into the mud when they go across the cobbles. Okay, often my primary user's shoe comes off and then gets their sock all muddy. Okay, this is a big problem for the primary user. Okay, so already the primary user has identified a problem within the context that you were given. The design briefs that you're going to go into later will come up with a possible solution for this problem. The more in-depth detail about the primary user will come on page 4. So we don't need to worry about that for another week. The next section you need is a stakeholder definition. So in this page, we've done in lesson the differences between primary user and stakeholders. Primary user is the person that has a vested interest in this product. Okay, they're the person that's going to be using it every single day. The stakeholder have a slight interest. They're going to be the ones that will be buying it for the primary user. They're going to be the ones using it every other weekend. They're going to be the ones buying it for the shop to sell on to the primary user. So a typical stakeholder could be say if it was a mobile phone, a smartphone designed for 15 to 40-year-olds interested in technology. So the primary user is not going to be, obviously, a granny, a 70-year-old granny, because that's not going to be the main market for these. The main market is the 15 to 40-year-old. So the stakeholder, you're going to want to aim this at possibly the parents of those 15 to 40-year-olds who could buy them the phone. You're going to want to market this at the shops that are going to be selling it onto the older people in that age gap. Okay, so O2, who want to sell it onto them. Sky Mobile, who want to sell it onto them. How are you going to do that? The differences between these two are possibly down to the specifications. So the primary user might want different things from the product than the stakeholder. So within this, the primary user wants to have a really nicely made material that the mobile phone is made from. Okay, the stakeholder, however, wants it to look nice, but also wants to be able to sell it, make a profit from it. So buy it in and sell it on and make a profit from it. They don't want to be buying in a product for £400 and selling it on for £410, making only £10. They want to buy in a product for £200 and sell it on for £400, making that £200 profit. So there's got to be thinking about the materials. What material could you use that looks and is nice, but is also cheap, that appeals to both areas? So there's the difference in the stakeholders and the primary user. So within this, you just need to list 3 different types of stakeholder. Now I'm going to go for, you need to list a person, so who's going to buy this product for the primary user. And then I want you to try and think of 2 shops. Okay, so 2 types of retail outlet that are going to possibly want to buy this product. This could then lead on to a possible research opportunity later on, or even when you come to evaluate your product, you could then take it to that retail outlet and ask them for their opinion. You could email them for their opinion. So if you've identified a retail outlet now, or 2 retail outlets, it gives you a lot of scope later on in the product and in the project. So 2 retail outlets, explain what they are, what they do, what they sell, and why they are considered to be the stakeholder and not the primary user. Next is, I want you to insert the mind map. So like we saw on the previous example of the design brief page, he had quite a large mind map. I don't want yours to be that big. Yours just needs to be in here to say that you've chosen this mind map. This is your chosen area, and it's all focused around this mind map. So that's your context that is going to be chosen. And then this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because this is where your design briefs come in. Now, the design brief, you need to have 3 of these. 3 different design briefs need to be made up. All through Key Stage 3, you've created a design brief for your product. You've often started it going, I am going to design and make a light for my dad. All right. Already, something like that is quite specific, and we want to go away from that area. We want it to be quite generic. More of that in a little while. But the 3 design briefs need to be quite short and sharp. They need to be about 3 sentences long. So you're looking no more than probably about 70 words. 70, 100 words maximum. 3 different design briefs. These can be labelled design brief 1, design brief 2, design brief 3, and then your design brief. Your design brief has to have a link to both the primary user and the context. I do not want to see a design brief that has a link to the primary user, but then starts talking about something completely irrelevant to the context that you've chosen. So if you've chosen music as your context, and then you start going on to talking about sport in your design brief, that has no relevance whatsoever to the context, and you will not be given a single mark for this page because you have not followed the continuity here. There needs to be links between the primary user and the context. Both areas need to be considered. An example of a design brief is, just read this off the help sheet that I've given you. So you do not say, I'm going to design and make a cup holder, for instance. You say, design a product that allows the general person to store and have easy access to their household items, especially focusing on the kitchen area. Now there, we've gone quite generic in all the terms. We haven't got fixated on one particular item, such as a cup holder, which was mentioned. We've gone here for all the items in the kitchen. So we can now think about, we've not restricted ourselves to just a cup holder. We've got everything in the kitchen. We've got utensil holders. We've got bread holders. We've got fridge mag, everything we've got in the kitchen. So we need to be thinking about making this generic. I have created on there a list of do's and don'ts. So the design brief don'ts I've put at, you don't mention a specific product or an idea. So nowhere in the design brief do you mention you're going to make this product. Okay, it has to be a generic terminology for it. So a product to move around the house, a product to move around the streets. So you haven't specified, I'm going to design a car, a product to move around the streets. So that could be a car, could be a bike, could be a skateboard, could be a helicopter. All right, you've got all the areas there. Do not ever forget what your chosen context is. So don't take your mind off that context. That always needs to be there. Don't go off on a tangent in these design briefs. So do not start thinking about other areas. Stick to the context, stick to the primary user. Don't be too wordy in these design briefs. Have it short and sharp. The main do in the design brief, I've listed several on the help sheet, which you can go through, but the main one is try and make it generic. So you've given yourself a lot of scope for design. You've given yourself the chance not to be fixated on a certain area, but you can then explore everything else. Once you've created these 3 different design briefs, I then want you to create an evaluation chart. Now, this is a simple grid. In this box here, you need to explain the reason why you've had this evaluation chart. I've given you 4 different areas to mark your design briefs against. So I've said that there's been no mention of a product. I've said its suitability to the project. So is it a suitable project to be building in 8 weeks? It's not going to be something that's going to take 15 weeks, possibly 20 weeks, a year. You've identified a need. So the need is identified within the design brief. And there's a relevance to the context that you were given on the first page. All these need to be marked against one another. You can do this by ticking the box. You can do it by crossing the box. You can do it by colouring in the box. But in this explanation here, you need to state what the tick means, what the green box means. Green could mean it's perfect, it's a perfect fit. Amber could mean not quite. Red could mean it doesn't fit it at all. Okay, and then the design brief with the most green boxes is the winner. That's all you have to put there. The final box is your chosen design brief. This is where you give me the reason why you've decided on design brief number 2, design brief number 3. What was it that design brief number 3 had that the other briefs didn't? Okay, why have you chosen that one? Give it a little bit of context to real life. So how can this design brief help in possibly the community? Could it have an effect on the community later on when it goes into mass production? Okay, just short, probably a paragraph this needs to be. This needs to be a little bit of a wedge of writing. Okay, so you're looking about 6 sentences, 5-6 sentences there. Then you've got the conclusion to the page, summing up who the primary user is, why you've chosen that primary user, you've identified the stakeholders, who the stakeholders are, and then the reason why you chose a chart to evaluate your design briefs and also what the design brief is. Okay, so you're just summing up everything that's happened on that page. The final part is the next page box. Now, the next page box is going to be the mood board. So you write in here, I'm going to create a mood board. The mood board will enable me to, will help me to be, help me to get inspiration from other products, other pictures, okay, for my research, for my ideas, my idea generation, something along those lines. This is an example of the, well, this is the design brief help sheet. At the top of every help sheet, I've put the exam board mark bands. So this here is for the design brief. You all should be looking at mark band 4, possibly mark band 3, you know, for some of you, but mark band 4 is where it is. Everything that I've gone through. So mark band 4 states clear and full relevance to the context, offering scope for challenge and a focused identification of a primary user and other stakeholders. So the first box I said for you to do, primary user, you've identified a primary user. Second box, the stakeholders, you've identified who the stakeholders could be. Clear and full relevance to the context. Now I told you, I've explained how the design brief has to carry a link to the primary user and also the context. Do not go off track and start talking about something else within the design brief. That is not linked to the design brief, to the design context or the primary user. By making it generic, you're giving yourself a lot of scope for ideas. You're not becoming fixated. So that's why we use the generic terminology. So we have the scope for design. We have the scope for challenge. We're not just fixated on one single idea. So nowhere in those design briefs do you mention that single idea. Just to reiterate, exploring the context, end of Monday, 15th of June. Design brief, end of Monday, June 22nd. Remember, both of these are for the whole page 1, page 2. Use the example given to you. Use the example coursework that I've sent to you. Use the example pages for inspiration. Okay, there are plenty of resources that I've sent you that you need to be looking into. Do not think if you get stuck, I will be here to help you. So email me. Look at the YouTube channel DT is Mr. Sanders for constant reference to these videos, but also look at www.dtismrsanders.com for page help. So the help sheets on the page, they will be loaded up onto there as well if you lose these. So these will be on Teams, ready for you to look at and go. Get on with it. Okay, well done, guys. It's another lengthy video of 35 minutes, but well worth it, I think. Off you go. Well done.